Hello, hello, hello. It's our first opening night of our YouTube channel. Wonderful, beautiful nurses. We are so excited to have you here. I have no idea if anybody is watching. Yes, I do. There's two people who just commented. Good to see you, Kanata and K Leai. I'm sorry I didn't say your name right. Thank you, Kay, for being here. Hey, we're so glad you're here. We're going to bring our first guest in. And his name is Trevor Mueller. Trevor, how are you doing tonight?
Great, Sharon. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Hey, you're part of our team at Klimek Reviews. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Trevor.
Yeah, Sharon, I'm a certified registered nurse anesthetist by profession and training. And I went to Cedarville University, graduated there in 2006, worked as a nurse in the critical care surgical cardiothoracic ICU up in Cleveland, Ohio. And then I went to the University of Cincinnati for anesthesia training. And I work in the Dayton area now of Ohio and do all sorts of anesthesia for women who are laboring and pregnant and also just normal cases. And then, of course, I work with Klimek Reviews since 2014. I've worked with Mark
Wow.
and the team here. So, yeah, I enjoy that role in helping nursing students become nurses.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really glad you're here. We've got another guest. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Dr. Pete Savard, it's good to see you.
Well, it's good to be here tonight. Glad to see everybody in the comments saying hello. So welcome, and thanks to Sharon for getting this all ready to go. So excited to be here.
Yeah, tell us.
I figured I'd tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
Funny, I had Mark as a student. I think Trevor did as well. But I had Mark as a professor back in the 80s. And so I think I might have learned something right out of the chute. But
Pete, you're older than me. You had him back in the 80s. I had him in the 90s.
Well, I don't think
Trevor
Mark's
had him in the
that old.
2000s.
Yeah, I don't think Mark's that old. So one of us is lying. I guess that's me. So, but anyway, have probably 29 years of ER and trauma experience as a nurse. Last probably 3 to 5 years, been shifting over to global health. Sharon, I know you have some interest in that as well. But really have enjoyed that, and probably been teaching for at least 15 years in one capacity, whether the classroom at a university or with Mark, or even actually just outside of that as an educator. So glad to be here tonight. Glad to see everybody online again.
That's awesome. Well, we have a very special guest star that I think everybody is waiting to see. And I don't know, I feel like I should have a drum roll or something, but I don't have one. So we are just going to add the one and only Mr. Mark Klimek. I bet people can hardly believe you're here, Mr. Mark Klimek. How are you doing?
I can hardly believe I'm here. Anyhow, hey, everybody. As she said, I'm Mark Klimek, and we are a team here. And we're really concerned and want you to do the absolute best you can and succeed and get that license and be a great nurse. So we're really committed to that. And a lot of what we do is to that end. My experience professionally is I started as a nurse back in the 70s, 1972, I think. Back before we ever wore gloves for anything. You were supposed to do everything with your bare hands, so you didn't communicate to people that they were dirty in some way. So things have really gone full circle here. But I got a degree in nursing from Youngstown State, associate degree. Then I worked and went back to the University of Virginia for a baccalaureate degree. Then went back to Wayne State University in Detroit for a master's degree, then went back to Wayne State for doctoral work. And I've taught nursing for 39 years. I taught 2 years at Youngstown State and then went for 37 years at Cedarville University, where I met you three. And I taught every student that graduated from there.
Yes,
and still, because I retired last May, so there will be 2 more classes that I have of graduating classes. So for 2 more years, I've taught everybody that's graduated from that university.
Yep.
So if you hear noises, I'm out west, outside.
We dragged him away from his vacation, you guys. He came onto our live stream all the way from out west, USA.
So you'll hear magpies and all kinds of fire sirens and stuff out here. So hopefully you can tolerate that.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is pretty cool, actually. We don't even get to see each other all that often, really, the four of us. So this is kind of unique even for us to all be together at the same time. So that's pretty cool. All right, Mark. Well, my first question is for you. What is your perspective on the audio recordings of you that have been posted on YouTube for quite a few years?
Well, I have a love-hate relationship with that. Let's start with the hate and then move to the love. One of the things is I don't those recordings, who knows when they were made, who knows by whom they were made, and for what purpose they were made. But people would bring recording devices to the reviews and record my voice and then post them, make them available on the internet. Now, the problem is nursing changes constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And the NCLEX changes, the plan and the test plan changes every 3 years. So unless those recordings were done in the last 3 years, those recordings could contain information that is out of date. It was current when the person recorded it, but it's not what's done now. A classic example is select all that apply questions. Up until 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it was never just one on a select all that apply, and it was never all of them. And I've said that in review after review after review. And many of you have listened to reviews that are recorded online where I've said that. But that changed 4 to 5 years ago to where now it can be one and it can be all. And that's what I teach now. I stay current. So as things change, what I teach changes. So if you don't know when those were recorded, it can be dangerous. The other thing too is they were not supposed to be recording those, so that is a bit of an intellectual integrity issue there. So those are reasons why I don't like them up, and I don't like to have to answer for having said things 10 years ago that were true then that aren't true now. And people say, "Well, Mark said," okay, and then the reasons why I would like them is if it can help people. Well, yeah, that's great. That's great. Also, if it gives you exposure to our program and you think you want to see more or whatever, that's also a good value of those programs online. And I totally understand the utility and the ease of accessing a program on demand in your schedule at your time when you can do it. I understand that the utility of that. But I try to keep tight control of the content of my reviews so that what is said is the most accurate and current at the time. And having all these reviews from 10, 15, 20 years ago doesn't allow me to do that quality control to give you the best experience.
Yeah. So knowing that, things have changed especially since COVID, we've talked about this, and there's more of an expectation for things to be available on demand technologically. Is there any plan for Klimek Reviews to offer these things as videos that can be purchased?
Well, what we're doing now to help people get the material they need in a more accessible way is to increase the amount of online product we sell. A year ago, we only did maybe 4 live online reviews. About a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, since the January 1 of 2022, we've committed to doing at least 1 live online review every single month of the year, so that no matter when you graduate, when you're ready to take it, when your 45 days is up, there's something available to you where you don't have to travel, you don't have to pay extra money for all of those expenses, and whereas before this past May, you would have had to have waited, and I understand how that creates a major problem, because if we only have 2 or 3 online reviews a year, and then we don't have anything online for purchase, that really is not meeting the need. So what we're doing is currently we're tripling the number of online live classes that we're offering, and we're looking to see how that meets the need. Now, in the future, if we do have some things where they're offered by unit on demand at your leisure, whenever you want them, wherever you want them, that really does, when we investigated that this past 2 months, that's going to take a very long time. We have to get learning management systems. It takes a long time to get those recorded, quality wise, up. It's going to take, so don't look for them this year. I'm sorry, it just isn't going to happen this year. But we're trying to make more online stuff available.
Mark, someone made this comment. Madeline Crook made this comment. She says, I love the monthly live purchase option. Could you explain to her this idea of refreshing, that you don't have to purchase it every single time you want to take it?
Okay. Just as a thing, Sharon, my battery's running low, so I'm going to have to cut out and plug in here in a second.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, could somebody else take that question real quick, and I'll just plug in and not lose me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Hang on.
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, so as an attendee, you pay for your registration. You get to attend, whether it's an online review or an in-person review. And what comes with that is the ability to refresh a subsequent review for a nominal fee to save your spot. And so if you would attend, let's say, for instance, one of Sharon's live reviews, you could, the next month attend one of Pete's online reviews or one of my online reviews. And we would just get you in there and you could hear the same material from a little bit different style because, hey, we're each individuals, and maybe glean some things or hear us explain things a little bit differently, but the same core things would be there. So that's what your refresh option is.
That's right. And Natasha says, do you repurchase the online review questions? So Natasha, I'm not sure if you're talking about the Blue Book app. The Blue Book app is something you purchase once, but we're going to get to that. I just want you to know I'm seeing your questions. I'm not ignoring them. In a couple minutes, we'll get to where we talk about like, what is the Blue Book? What is the Yellow Book? And all that kind of stuff. And I am starring some questions that I see in the chat. So I want to make sure that we get to some of these other things first. And then I'm going to go through the chat and try to answer some of those questions. So you know what, why don't we go ahead and answer that question right now? I have a list of questions written down here. So hold on, let me make sure I do this. Trevor, let's see. I wanted, Trevor, you to talk about what happens when somebody registers for a review. So what is it? Because people have trouble navigating or understanding the website. So could you explain the website a little bit more and help them understand what they get when they register?
Yeah, definitely. So here's our different products that we offer to help nursing graduates and students prepare to pass their NCLEX exam. Our review is for students that are taking either the RN or the PN version of the NCLEX. So either one, we're going to prepare you, okay? We have the classic 3-day comprehensive NCLEX review. That's what we've been known for. That's what is the most popular. And so you can get that in one of two different formats. You can go and attend an in-person session, which we all teach in-person sessions, or you could attend an online session, 3-day review, okay? Identical in content, just a different modality. So typically what happens is someone, we offer reviews in a bunch of different places across the United States. So maybe you want to go to a live review near you, an in-person review near you. So you go to the website, you look at the list and you see, hey, there's one that's near me. You click the register button and it takes you through what you need to do. Or maybe you're far away. Maybe you're overseas and you want to do one of our online reviews. We have them listed as online. So you would actually see that on the registration page on the website. And when you click that button, you'll be led through all these different steps to make sure that you'll have the right Zoom link for the day of the review. You'll know exactly when the review is going to be offered. We email the PDFs of the Yellow Book and the Blue Book to you. So you'll have everything you need so that when it comes time for that online review, you'll have it all right in front of you. and you can engage with us. Those are the two main ways that are the two modalities of our 3-day NCLEX review. We also have on the website what's called the Blue Book web app. The Blue Book web app is entirely content-based. This is the essential content that Mark and our team here has identified in order to pass the NCLEX. You've got to master it, okay? Now, as part of our 3-day review, you actually get a PDF of that. But if you like the electronic format of it, then you can go and purchase complete access to it for $50 on our website. Mark also offers small group tutoring. And this is just tutoring with Mark and a small group of 20 to 30 students. And he goes through questions. And there's 3 different levels to that. And he covers different topics or types of questions in each of those levels. And that's really going to help you apply the knowledge that you have, the NCLEX style questions. So right there, those 3 things are what we have and offer to you on Klimek Reviews.
Yes, that's true. And I just put the banner up to show you where you go to register. I'll put that up again. There's just some other banners I want to put up. So I'm not going to leave that up permanently. And so could you just, I was doing some other things. Did you talk about how they get the yellow book when they register?
So if you are going to attend an in-person review, the way that it currently works is you actually get a physical yellow book on the day that you go, the first day of your in-person review. You'll actually be given a printed yellow book. Okay. And so that's for the in-person reviews. For an online review, you'll get an email with a PDF of that yellow book. Mm-hmm. And then all you'll have to do is go to your local FedEx or print shop, have them print that, and then you have that to take notes on during the online review.
Good. Thank you. And there's been a comment here, Pete, talking about your upcoming review. So I'm going to give you a chance here to talk. My chunky pup says Pete has a review on July 15th through the 17th. So Pete, could you tell us a little bit about what you have coming up?
Yeah. So when we talked as a group last year, we were trying to figure out if there was a way that we could help international students. And we were getting requests from international students. And so there were some logistical issues with that. And so we've worked through that. We did a international class in March, and then we're doing one the 15th through the 17th. And so after I do the second one, we're going to kind of talk as a team, kind of review some of the benefits of just that methodology and see if it, if it seemed to be helpful for students from the international environment. And so, I've been asked, well, if I'm an international student, will this class be helpful? Well, the answer is yes, right? Because the NCLEX is the same NCLEX, whether you're based out of, Kenya, where my friend Sonia is, or, India, or if you're in Canada, right? It's the same NCLEX. Mm-hmm. And so the international class, one of the things that we have seen with that is that the material is the same, right? Diabetes is the same regardless of what country you live in. But sometimes for students that have English as a second language, or maybe even a third language, there are nuances in communication and abbreviations in language, and maybe even some nuances in the fundamental education. And so that helps you as the international student identify that early on, right? You'd never want to show up at boards and figure out like you've totally missed something. And so that class, and you don't see it on the banner because I think the class is full. And so, there's no sense to advertise something that you can't sign up for. But we're experimenting with that, and we're going to meet and see what we can do with more of that. So it's a good question.
Okay. And since you're talking about it, Pete, could you talk about the difference? And I know Trevor touched on it, but could you talk about if there is a difference between the in-person and the online reviews? Because I know people say, I can't make it to the in-person reviews. What's the difference? So could you just touch on that?
So I think like with anything in life, right, there's pluses and minuses in about a decision. So with the online classes, there's definitely some benefits for you as the student, right? You don't have to travel. So like, for example, in September when I'm down in Greenville or when I'm in Miami in October, December, or whenever Sharon's in LA, and out west, you have to travel. If you want to hear the infamous Mark right there, right, sitting right there with us, you got to travel to Ohio. And somebody's like, why would I pay to go to Ohio? Well, there's actually good reasons. But the online version allows, use the student to not have to, to burden those costs. The class is much like an online format. And I guess one of the good things from this whole COVID thing is that we've learned how to function a little bit better online. And so you'll hear the same class. We'll go over the same material. You get to see one of our faces. But the problem is I can't really see your face. And so we use the chat function to communicate back and forth. And so I think that still is very beneficial. We've gotten a lot of, positive feedback ad nauseum, regardless of who's been doing the classes, that is a helpful venue. Probably the one thing that makes, or one of the things that makes an in-person class, right? If you're in one of our classrooms and we're physically there, if you miss something in the yellow book, you can kind of look over to your neighbor and say, hey, what did he just say? I was thinking about that last concept. And of course, if we're online, like, you can't do that. There are some ways I think we can mitigate that, and we've been working with some students, and I think there's some successful ways. But that in class, that in-person environment, I think sometimes is helpful, and it may be helpful for you as a student, right? If you're like me and you get distracted easily, like the last thing you want to be for me is at home and I'm like looking around and like, I think I need to get something to eat again, right? If I'm sitting in a classroom, I'm like, it's the 8th time I've gotten up to get a snack. I probably, I get a little embarrassed. So maybe I should pay attention, right? So there's good things regardless of the method of learning. And we have received just overwhelming support of the different methods. So like anything in life, there's some good to it. There's some maybe not so good to it, but you will still learn and you will still be on your way to successfully, navigate the exam. So.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. And I had back in January, there was a COVID surge. And so my site shut down in January. I was supposed to come out and do a live review in LA and they shut down. And so I had to turn it to online. And this is a shout out to Gloria, if you're out there, because Gloria just passed her board. So I doubt she'll see this, but if she does, so she had failed once and she wanted to come to my LA review, but then we switched it to online and she was very unhappy. So she emailed me and she said, I want my money back. And I said, well, you can have your money back, but it's the same review. I said, why don't you talk to somebody who's taken it online? So I referred her to somebody who'd taken it with me online. She talked to them. And that person told Gloria, said, hey, it's just as good online. Just do it. You'll be fine with it. So she did. And she just notified me she passed her boards and she had been a previous person who had failed it before. So that's, it is the same. It's a different environment. I do strongly recommend you guys listen, if you're going to do it online, get a room in the library or something. Yeah. It is really tough to sit at home and have your kids screaming and Amazon delivering packages and the dog wanting to go outside and everything. Like, it's tough. There's a benefit. The main benefit of the in-person review is that you get away from all the distractions. And Mark, I know that's something you've talked to me about before. Do you want to talk just a little bit about this idea of getting away from the distractions when you're doing this studying time?
Well, I think that's one of I was developing, years ago, what modality would I deliver the course in? What would be my delivery mode? I really valued the in-person interaction because what I saw was not only were the students engaged more continually, like Pete said, and not only were they able to clarify, but they as a group fed each other confidence. And as a group, they affirmed each other. And as a group, they realized that they were not in some class by themselves of an unsuccessful person, that people were just like them in those situations. And that camaraderie, that group sense really affirmed a lot of them. And then nurses typically, it's very rare for a nurse to get their nursing education in a vacuum. I mean, you've had to study with children, spouses, significant others, partners, jobs, drama, and sometimes sabotage. And if sometimes you can get away from all of that noise, it says to your mind says, I'm here, and I'm here for a purpose, that one purpose. Your mind then filters that information as more important information. If you're listening to the same thing in your home while 100 other things are being asked of you, your mind processes that information as just one more of 100 other things that you have to attend to. So your mind already files it in a does everybody there have a junk drawer in your house? Do you have a junk drawer where everything just gets thrown into?
Or room?
Well, yes, a junk
Yeah, it's
room.
the one right next to the fridge. Just if
Yeah.
like, where does this go? Oh, just put it in the drawer next to the
junk
fridge.
drawer. Yeah. Well, see, if you're at home doing all this, it's great and all, but your mind sometimes considers all that you're learning from your online experience as just more junk to throw in the junk drawer with all the other things that are there. But if you're there live in person with that group, your mind sits back and says, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready. And you can't imagine can you imagine, just ask you guys, through school, if you could have taken away all your environmental distractions while you were studying and preparing, would that have made a difference in your performance? And if the answer is yes, that's what live reviews in person, face to face, do. They take out all the environmental noise that can take place that on an online. But it's not. But there again, that's, as Pete said, that's an advantage of that. There's disadvantages to that as well.
And I would say even as teaching, like you probably see all of our backgrounds and you see us, we're probably all in our offices. But when I teach, I go to a hotel, I get a conference room, and I sit there, because even for me as the educator, I want to be focused. I don't want distractions, because I want you as the students to get this, not only this experience, but to help move you from point A to point B so that you can continue to grow, right? I want to be able to invest in you, and I can't invest if I'm sidetracked as well. So we're not just telling you something that you need to do and that we don't adhere to. It's the very same thing that we do as well. So.
Yeah, and I do think that that can be mimicked if you get a room by yourself somewhere out of your house where there's not so much distraction.
Yes, Sharon. If you can't do live, then do the next best thing, which is that.
Mark, we've had a couple questions here about the small group tutoring, and I'd wanted you to talk about it anyway. So could you tell us a little bit about the small group tutoring that you do online?
Yeah, the small group tutoring was developed conceptually during COVID, when we weren't able to do face-to-face reviews, and we did online virtual, a few of them a year, to get us through that period of time. We were brainstorming and thinking, how can we help students when it's unfeasible or impossible to do 3-day live face-to-face reviews at venues because the governments won't let us or it's unsafe. So we said, well, maybe one thing we could do in lieu of doing a whole 3-day content application review, what we could offer is, for small groups of 40 and 50 people, we could at least teach them some ways to answer questions more with higher level thinking, especially when you don't know the answer. What are good ways to guess? And what are good ways to strategize? And so what we did was decide, rather than present 3 days of content, let's just do 3 short sessions of test taking strategy. And we'll develop those 3, and then they can do 3 hours at a time. And so that developed that way. And now, to be successful on NCLEX, you have to acquire knowledge, you have to gain confidence, and you have to be good at exams, exam proficient. The 3-day review does all 3. The 3-day content review for 25 5 hours does all of that.
Mm-hmm.
The sessions that I do tutoring is assuming that you have the knowledge base and assuming that you have the confidence. Here's how you get better at certain types of questions, like best questions, first questions, order questions, priority questions, select all that apply, those kinds of questions. And we just do questions. So it's based on one of the three things. It only provides one of the three things that a 3-day review provides. And that, well, maybe some confidence, but it gives you only maybe half of what you get in a full, less than half of what you get. But at least it's something for people who couldn't travel, couldn't go places, and there were no online options.
Do you have any small group sessions coming up?
I think we have one next week.
Okay, and you have 3, right?
Yeah, it's 3. It's 3 levels, but it's just different content areas. They're not sequential.
Okay, so they can take 3. You have 3 different small group tutoring options, and you call them level 1, 2, and 3, but they don't have to be taken in any order.
Correct. And they're all different.
And they're all via Zoom, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And we are talking about when we do more the online and we're more accessible, will we be doing away with those? That's a question on the table, because that was a stopgap strategy for during the COVID shutdowns.
Okay. Trevor, how do you have any? First of all, do you have any reviews coming up? And then how do you get ready for a review? How do we know? How does someone know they're going to get the same quality review with you as they do with Mark?
So I'll start with your first question. I have an online review in July, an online review in August, and an online review in September. So I'm pretty much taking up the September ones, or the summer ones, excuse me. Yeah. So if you want to come to a summertime online review, I'll be the teacher, the instructor. And then your question as far as how you know that it's going to be the same quality with me or Pete or Sharon as you would get with Mark Klimek. And I think the first thing is, number one, Mark, he's pretty protective of his review. In other words, there's a lot of work that went into making the 3 of us, and there's another instructor, his name is Tim, as well, all of us ready for teaching Mark's review. And we all have been mentored by Mark in some capacity over the course of at least more than a decade, as you've heard already. So he's really built into a lot of us, and personally, but then also professionally. And so I think that we understand how to think through the set of problems that nursing students and graduates face when they're attempting to pass the NCLEX. And we think like Mark, and really Mark has 3 main ideas. When you think of Klimek, the Klimek brand, it's being clear, concise, and memorable. Clear, concise, and memorable. And so we strive as instructors to embody that in the way that we think and present. And that's exactly what Mark does too. Now, we're not going to have the exact same style as Mark. We retain so many of the memorable things and examples and principles that are part and parcel to the review. But hey, I'm a little bit different because I'm not, in Mark's age and stage of life, and Sharon and Pete and so on. We're all different because we're coming different backgrounds and clinical skills and so on. So it's going to be a little bit different style, but hopefully it's just as clear, concise, and memorable, because that's what it means to be at a Klimek review, and that's what you expect. So that's how you can know that that's what you're going to get.
Thank you, Trevor. And one of the reasons I thought that this would be beneficial for us to get together and talk like this is because at least we're real people. There's a lot of scams online. There's a lot of people who sell a product related to NCLEX, but it really doesn't help them. So it may not be a scam, but it's not particularly helpful. And, Mark hasn't just taught us how to teach this review. Mark has taught us. we have each one of us spent a lot of time with Mark over the years. I have known Mark for 30 years. Trevor, you've known him for at least 20. And Pete, you've known him at least 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. And he has mentored us in many ways. He not only taught us when we were young and impressionable, but he continued to mentor us over the years and has very closely mentored us as we've started teaching with him. So Mark, do you have any comments to make? Do you think students, I mean, I know what you're going to say. You're not going to say anything bad about us, but do you have anything particular you want to say about that? How can students be confident they're getting the same review with us as they do with you?
Well, the curriculum, we have a curriculum. We have a set curriculum that every professor must cover 100% within the time allotted. And it happens 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. And it is scripted. So Trevor is not allowed to teach anything that isn't in the review, and he has to teach everything that is in the review. So he cannot add and subtract according to what he likes or doesn't like, or values or doesn't value. So they have to use all the same outlines, all the same process. They have to use the same principles. They have to use the same lines of reasoning. Where the individuality comes in is the way they communicate. Of course, the cadence and tenor of their voices, that's all different. Sometimes the stories that we tell are different. And we come from different backgrounds. And I see that as being enriching. The fact that Trevor has the professional experience he has, and Pete has the governmental and educational experience he has, and Sharon has the community and professional experience and educational that she has, really helps broaden out. So a lot of the things that I teach, that I say, have been influenced by them. And well, what they teach has been influenced by me. So we do work as a team, yet I have very tight control over the content, so that if they don't cover the content in the way that is prescribed, then they will cease to have that contract to do it again. So,
and Mark hears if people aren't happy. Mark hears if people aren't happy with how we teach the reviews.
Yeah, I do hear it. I hear it. Yeah, I hear it right away.
Yeah. It's funny. The last class I did, the online, I had a student in the chat. Literally, I wasn't even talking. I hadn't even gone through the introduction and the logistics of the weekend. And this gal puts in the chat box, "You better be as good as Mark or else." And I'm like, okay. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, but I'm thinking, well, I say that because I understand her concern, right? Yeah. Just probably like maybe some of you have the same concern. You really want quality.
Yeah,
right. I mean, You're a student. Your finances are limited. Your time is your time is limited. Your bandwidth is limited. Totally get that. We have all been in those same shoes, and some of us are still in those same shoes. So we appreciated that. So the good news was, by supper time, she was very complimentary to me and was saying thank you and was glad she was in the class. So
yeah, and that's what we do get that a lot. People are skeptical of us, and we're okay with that. Trevor, Pete, and I. We're okay with that because we would be skeptical of us as well. We all had Mark as a professor. We know how good he is. None of us are thinking like it's easy to be as good as Mark Klimek. If you guys think he's awesome, we're way ahead of you on that. Okay. So we are very aware, Trevor, Pete, and I are very aware of the quality that you're expecting from us. And it is our goal 100% of the time to give you the highest quality we possibly can. Can we be as good as Mark? I would never say we could be as good as Mark, but we can be a lot better than most of what you get. And we can be almost as good as Mark. And that's pretty good. So, I think I would say you could be confident in the quality you get from us.
And I would add that
part of going to get the quality.
Go ahead, Mark.
Get the quality because that's part of the curriculum. Yeah. And these people are all good communicators, professional communicators, and so I'm not at all concerned about it. I would take a class from anyone. I would recommend any of my children who are preparing for NCLEX. I would recommend them to take any of these three people's classes.
And I think what Mark hasn't told you is that part of our training with him is really just been in the roots of pedagogy, right? So what is that? That's how to teach and how people learn. And so I know that at least for a year before I even taught my first lecture in one of his classes, right, that we worked through that. So again, we're just as privileged to be working with Mark as educators and as professionals as you are to be able to receive the materials. So there's a lot of work, and I think we're just as appreciative as you as students. So.
Jackie asked a question. She said, can we have a phone number for any questions that we have? So Jackie, honestly, we don't have a phone number for you to call, but we do have an email that's been up here for a while. And we don't have a phone number because we're a small family business and we don't have an office. All of us work outside of our homes, and there's no office to call. There's no full-time secretary answering phone calls. So you can email us, and we're pretty good at getting back with emails. My email is also available. I'll give it out at the end here. But our admins are all related to us. So my admin is my daughter. Mark's admin. Well, I guess your admin isn't related to you anymore, Mark. But for years, your admin was related to you. I think Pete, your admin is related to you as well, isn't she?
Yeah, she's my wife. So there's no slack cut for me.
Yeah.
So you guys want something, you just send a note, and you have a champion in your corner for me to be responsive.
Yep. And honestly, Trevor, I don't know who your admin is.
You're looking at him right here.
I thought maybe it was you.
Admin.
I thought so. Okay. Mark, there's this rumor that's been going around, and I have been debunking it, but I got to ask you this. Did you write questions for the NCLEX?
I went through all of the classes for item writing. And in those classes, I did write items. Now, whether those show up on NCLEX or not depends on the psychometric testing that goes through. But I was doing that, submitting items to them, because what they were doing is they were soliciting back in the 1990s and early 2000s. They were asking people, professional educators, to submit questions to them so that they could test them and run them through their testing process. And I was one of the people that was writing questions on behalf of their request. But then I think it was somewhere, I've lost track of the date, but it's somewhere in the 2003 to 2005 area. The writers of the exam have made a rule that you can't be submitting questions for the NCLEX and being paid for that, and do reviews and paid for that, because that's sort of a conflict of interest. You write the question and then you do reviews to teach that's just not, you understand how obviously that's a conflict of interest. Yeah. So those of us, and a lot of us were doing that. A lot of the people, Hearst and people like that, all the people in the business, we were doing that. We were all sort of double doing, and we had to choose. And so I chose to go the route of reviewing, because I felt I had more to give there and more talent in that area than just sitting writing questions in a vacuum. So according to their rules, and their rules don't, and that's back when select all that apply wasn't even something you wrote back then, So yes, I did, but I'm sure all of any questions that were mine have been filtered out of the NCLEX by now, because it's been at least 15, 16 years since I've written anything for them.
Okay, well, good to know. I've never actually asked you that question before, but I've heard it from a lot of people, and I'm always like, I don't know if he did that or not. Hey, Dr. Pete, let me ask you, I know you do a lot of online reviews. Where do you do your live reviews, and how do you decide where you go to do your your live in-person reviews?
Yeah. So when I first started working with Mark, one of the areas of request was the Southeast. So kind of like that Texas to Florida and kind of like below, the Carolinas. And so we started exploring those areas. Right now, I go to Miami, Florida 3 times a year. And some people go, well, why can you come 4 times or can you come 5 times? Well, what we're trying to do collectively, and maybe even on a smaller level, just on my own schedule, is to be available as much as possible. So for example, if I go to Miami, and let's just say I go 4 times, but they're not spread out, then students don't have that potential availability throughout the year. And so what we found works at least seemingly best from you, our students, right, requesting the class, is I'll go to Miami, sometime in the late spring, and then go to Miami twice in the fall. And so we've worked the same with Dallas. COVID really impacted Dallas in the venues. There was just a lot of conflict. We were actually working with some of the universities, and there were just a lot of policy changes, and so we're really trying to just figure that particular venue back out. We've gotten requests from other places in Florida, in Atlanta, so we'll try those. Not really necessarily the success that we would have hoped, but was able to speak at the South Carolina Nurses Association this past year, and really great response. And so we'll be down there in September for the second event. And so for me, kind of having the Southeast, just like Trevor or Sharon, we're trying to be available in those regions. So it's not any long block of time that we're not in that area available to students. And then, as Mark has already said, with us shifting to having an online every month, again, that increases the accessibility to really to the material and for help for you as the student. So.
All right, good. Trevor. Yeah, Trevor. This question's for you. It just popped up in the chat. Natasha is asking us, is New Jersey on the map?
Oh man, Natasha, I'll tell you what. So pre-COVID, I was going to New York City, Philly, and New Jersey. And I loved going there. The students there, especially, I spent most of my time in Manhattan and in Brooklyn. But I love the students in New York City. I miss them a lot. They're not shy at all. They're going to ask you every question you can think of. But supremely engaged people. So for the entirety of the class, everybody's on it. So I missed going to New York City. The problem that I had with going to that area of the country post-COVID is that the government authorities still have limited number capacities in the classrooms that I would use. And so that's what I run up against. It's just too cost prohibitive to actually go to those places because they only allow so many people in the classes. And so someday I hope I could go back, but I call all my venues that I typically go to, which are usually schools that have nursing programs, and still they say, hey, we're not even accepting outside visitors because of the COVID regulations. So someday I hope to get back there. And then Helen, I just saw your comment about Massachusetts. I actually went to Boston back in 2018, 2019, something like that. And had a good review there, but really not enough people were interested to keep coming back.
And I would say, Trevor, the same thing with Texas. One of the things we're all struggling with, and I know Sharon struggled with it as well, is post-COVID, trying to find those venues that will allow us to come back. And seemingly, it seems like the schools have been the hardest to work with. They really want to try to minimize, traffic in and out of their campuses. And so we're working hard. I know all of us are. We've had this discussion many times. Where are you able to find? What are we able to find? And I'll ask Sharon, hey, what seems to be working, because I can't find an answer. So it's a struggle that we're all really trying to work, because again, we love to teach. We love to see, we love the emails back, right, that you've been successful, but we're just trying to figure out this post-COVID world, probably like most everybody else.
Yeah, governmental regulation has really hindered a lot of us. So in areas where they're more open, we've been able to continue a good presence, but areas that are more closed, we just aren't welcome, and we're not able to do it. We'd be there tomorrow, but we can't if they won't let us.
I'll just chime in. I go to California. I was going every month. Airfare has tripled in the last 3 months. So I'm going to be going every other month. Gas prices out there are through the roof, so people don't really even want to drive more than a half hour to get to the venue. So I'm having the same problems everybody else is. The venues I can find actually fine. It's that people don't necessarily want to come unless they're like 10 minutes away. So that's the issue I'm having. But I'm going to be in LA in August. I would love to see you there. And then I'm going to be in Northern California in October. I don't have the site exactly set yet, but I'll be back in Southern California then I think in December. So that's kind of where I will be. And I'll do some online reviews. I'm doing an online review in November as well. Okay. Mark, why don't you go outside of Ohio to do your reviews? And why don't you do online reviews? They want Mark Klimek.
Well, it's a reality of time. I can handle the in-person reviews in the Ohio area, and I can handle everything else. But I am retired, and I'm getting older. I'm 69. I'll be turning 70 here, and so there isn't. I just don't travel, and it's very difficult for a person of my generation to get the concepts that are like these three people here are so much better at the online reviews than I am. Pete talks about the chat box, and he doesn't understand that at age 70, that's out of your peripheral lateral vision. That's out of your field of vision peripherally, laterally, and unless you want to tire your lateral rectus muscle out, looking over there, you don't even see it. Do you see what I'm saying? Which is so frustrating for people. And just little things like that it's really difficult for me to be able to feel like I'm giving you what I can give you online. Now, these three, I've seen them do it. They're great. I would rather take an online from them any day than me. Now, face-to-face, I think I can whip their rear ends any day of the week. You know what I mean? But not online. So I'm just
laughing because
that sounds like a challenge. That sounds like a challenge. I don't know.
But I'm thinking about how much he loves doing online reviews. I'm just thinking about that because I can just see him just doing those during COVID. I know how much he loved that, Mark.
Trevor had to suffer through 3 of them. He's still alive.
He's as soon as he could stop doing online reviews, he's like, I'm not doing anymore. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah. And I've got 3 great people that are better at it than me.
Did you want to add something, Trevor? No? Okay. Okay. Mark, could you talk a little bit about the Blue Book and the Blue Book app? I think it's something that we don't talk much about. People don't always understand what the purpose and why it's important. Could you just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, one of the things I always talk about 3 things you need to have to pass the licensing exam. You have to have a good knowledge base. You have to know how to take exams proficiently, and you have to have confidence. Those 3 things are the magic ingredients that result in a successful NCLEX experience. What I find, I've taught nursing graduates for decades, multiple decades. And one thing that I've always seen no matter who I review with individually, is they always overestimate their knowledge base. They always think they know more than they actually know. So they say, oh, I know diabetes. So you say, okay, when does NPH peak? I don't know. What are the 3 sick day rules for diabetes mellitus? I don't know. What syndrome is identical to hyperosmolar hyperglycemic non-catatic coma? What's the number 1 sign you see with this or that? And what's the normal value of that? And pretty soon they go, I don't know. Well, here's the rule. Can you apply something that you don't know? If you don't know it, can you apply it? There's no way. And a lot of reviews focus on teaching you how to apply information. But if you don't know it in the first place, that's wasted effort. So one thing I have found is people who aren't successful on NCLEX they often over-exaggerate or overestimate the depth and breadth of their body of the facts. The facts, the facts. And the Blue Book is designed to develop your knowledge base. Particularly those of you that have been out for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, you have forgotten more than you've ever learned. And you need a brush up to get those facts back up to the front of your brain. And the only way to do that is by a method we call drill. It's not popular in American education systems, but it's the only way to learn the facts is drill. And so the Blue Book is basically like a set of flashcards where, do you remember flashcards where you had a question on the front?
And they have electronic flashcards now, Mark.
Yeah. And then on the back, you have the answer, and it's one fact at a time and you go through those. So that's drill. And that makes you learn the facts so that when you go to NCLEX, you know the basic facts. Then all you have to do is apply them in a safe, effective manner. But what I was looking at is other reviews on the market do great at teaching you how to apply. They're really great at practicing questions. They're great at even delivering content, but what they don't focus on is factual knowledge base growth. They don't grow your factual knowledge base. And so I saw no books on the market that you could pull out and increase your knowledge base in an active learning style. The only ones I saw were these books that had these page after page, 450 pages of outlines that you read. Well, when you read an outline, you don't learn anything. When you read an outline, you just read it and you go, yeah. Then you think you know it. Then you get a question about it and you find out you don't know it. You have to learn actively. Those content review books with outlines are passive learning, and that never works. So what I had to come up with was a way for you to learn the facts, but learn it that makes you be active. You have to be engaged in the process. You have to actually answer the question, the factual question, before you ever get to select all that apply, before you ever get to multiple choice. You have to be able to answer single fact informational questions. So drill and drill cards was what I came up with, and that's what the Blue Book is. It's a compilation of large numbers of drill topics for you to gain your knowledge on what the NCLEX tests the most.
And I was laughing so hard. I was laughing so hard because I don't know any of you that are listening, but I took Mark's class back in 1990, right? And he didn't have the yellow book or the blue books, so we had flashcards, right? And I remember those flashcards. But to his point, you can go to an outline or you can go to a question bank, and all you're doing as a student is just acknowledging a line of logic that's correct. So right. why wouldn't you not say, oh yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense. But there's no learning. Right. Even back in the day, right? Back in the day when we had to have the chisel and the stone and write out our flashcards, it's that active learning. It's that active learning. And so then all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, man, I don't really know this. And you have to be honest with yourself, right? I tell my students that all the time. I don't really know this. Okay, well, good. Now we've identified a problem, and let us help you fix that problem. Same as the nursing process, right? You have to do an honest assessment and identify what's going on before you ever jump into intervention. So very, very similar.
Yeah. There's a good question here, Trevor. Maybe you could take this one. Kristen is asking, how soon do you recommend doing the live review before taking the NCLEX?
So Kristen, here's what you got to do. Okay. We recommend that the average student needs 40 hours of study after taking our 3-day comprehensive review before they take their NCLEX. So if you attend, let's say, Pete's online review coming up here mid-July, you need to be able to put in 40 hours of study after that review to, number one, master that blue book content, and then do a series and sets of practice questions. And then you're ready to take your NCLEX review. Now, if you're a below average student, it's going to take you maybe a longer. If you're an above average student, it's going to take you less time. But the average student, they need 40 hours of study after taking our live review before we suggest you sit for the NCLEX.
And I would like to suggest something that we talked earlier about, but I'm just not sure people really understand the benefit of it. And that is that you can once you pay full price for one Klimek review, you can take a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth one for $25 each time. You don't ever have to pay the full cost again. And the $25 is just basically a registration fee. So and a seat, so we know you're coming. So we make sure we have enough seats for everybody. So one of the things you could do is, let's say you're getting ready to take your standardized exit exams, but there's nothing coming to your area. So you take an online review, say in what month is it? March. Let's say you take an online review in March. But then you graduate in May, and I'm going to be in California in May, and you could come to my live in-person review. You don't have to pay again to do that. You can come for $25, and you get to refresh. And you will be surprised how much you learn the second time, because there's so much content. It is very challenging to process that much content after only one review. Now, a lot of people do it. I'm not saying it's impossible. What I'm saying is you will be surprised how much better you process and understand the content the second time you take it. So I would like to encourage you to consider that if you have the time. Pete, do you have
the Blue Book? As far as the Blue Book and the Blue Book app, they can purchase the Blue Book app from the Klimek Review site. Mm-hmm. And if they want a hard copy Blue Book, they can email that admin and Klimek NCLEX site, and they'll mail you one.
Okay, so I'll put that back up again, and then I'll put it's www.klimekreviews.com. We don't have a phone number because all of our admins are related to us, and we don't have an official office with people sitting at a phone waiting for it to call, but we're very good at replying to email. So if you email that, you can get your questions answered. Pete, do you have any specific advice for international students who need to take NCLEX?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest things that I've seen, and so I've taught outside of Mark's class internationally, and then, with a focus this year with trying to see what we can do collectively for the international student. And I think probably the big thing is that, like I said earlier, diabetes is diabetes, whether you're in India, Kenya, Canada, or the United States, right? I mean, diabetes is diabetes. But one of the things I found through my work, both in and outside of the Klimek Review with students, is that culture, language, and nuances are different, right? And so that's actually helped me even as an educator. And so, for example, this month with the international class, there are things like I just need to be more cognizant of, right? So when I have the abbreviation HA, for example, that to me seems common, but that's not common in other cultures and other education systems. And so, you have to know that means headache, right? But you'll see those abbreviations, you'll see some of those nuances, like, which, there's a tie, like, and people have asked me, I don't understand what a tie is. And so, we have to explain those things. So taking our class as an international student allows you to identify the potential barriers or hindrances in language, just in the English language in and of itself, and how concepts are described in language, and then maybe some deficits just in the education that you received. Now, I've told many students, they'll come to me and they'll say, man, I just wish I had a better education. I was educated in such and such a country. And I tell them, don't apologize. Don't feel bad. Right? I could have gone to a very poor school in the United States. I could have gone to a good school in the United States. It just is what it is. For us as educators helping you get it ready for boards, it's about identifying what are those gaps, right? And how can we help you move forward? And with the international student, again, language and nuances of speech in culture are those things that we can at least identify now. None of us want you sitting in front of the board screen going, I don't know what this abbreviation is, because that may not have been something that was common vernacular, wherever you went to school. So again, I encourage you, and like even Sharon said, it's not a bad option to plan on taking the class twice. When I was teaching seniors at Cedarville, I would say take it in the fall early. Why? Because it's going to help you identify those gaps and maybe give you a chance to take our principles and our rules and actually apply them in clinicals and reinforce that, like, this actually really works. Well, of course it does. That's why we teach it. And, I've had students say, I want a new book when I refresh. I'm like, okay, we will sell you a book. But as an educator, I encourage them to keep the same book, use a different color pen, because see, now you're not worried about filling in blanks. You can sit back and kind of soak this in and some of the higher concepts and go, oh, that's why I filled that in last time. So again, those principles are good whether you're a student from the United States or anywhere else. So, and now I feel like I just started to ramble a little bit, so I'm going to stop.
I didn't think you were rambling. I thought that was good. That was really good, Pete. Mark, one of the things you've said for as long as I've known you, which is a long time, is that vocabulary is the #1 reason people fail NCLEX. Is that still something you believe? And if so, could you explain that?
Yeah, you'll probably hear me say it 6 or 7 times when I do reviews. I always say vocabulary is king. Vocabulary is king. Because vocabulary is, I believe extremely passionately that an examination, including the NCLEX, is a conversation between you and the exam. It's a conversation. It asks you a question, you respond. It's a conversation. And all conversations start with words. And if the vocabulary isn't understood by both parties, the communication, the conversation will go off course. And there will be misinterpretation, misunderstanding, and misrepresentation. So you have to, because a test is a conversation, all conversations start with the words. And so if you don't have the vocabulary, you can't carry on the conversation, or you're limited in your responses in the conversation. So when I go to NCLEX, it just really, when I interact, I've probably interacted personally with more NCLEX candidates preparing for NCLEX than any other human being on the planet right now. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Because I interact with 300 people a week, 4,000 a year for 20 years. You're talking 80, almost 100,000 people I've had conversations with as preparers. And it never ceases to amaze me that words like clonus, tetany, they don't know them. A third of the class does not know what tetany is. A third of the class does not know what clonus is. And it just blows my mind. And at first I used to get discouraged and think, what am I working with? But then I realized it was a pattern and it was very common. And so now it was an opportunity to increase their conversational abilities with the exam. And I never assume people understand the meaning of a word when I teach. I always teach assuming you don't know what that word means. And that can be very irritating for some people, but just wait. Eventually, I'll be talking about a word you don't know. So don't get too, testy about it, But I really believe, as Pete said, do you guys realize that the word assumption is a bad word for NCLEX? And the word assume, or assumption are bad words, but the word assuming is a good word.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yep.
If you're assuming that their hygiene needs are met before you do this, that's good. But if you make the assumption that their hygiene needs are met, that's bad. Do you see what I'm saying? So those nuances is what Pete's talking about. And when we do those international reviews, he's very keenly listening for and picking up for those things that on a non-international review, we probably would just blast through. And I always tell people, if you've failed boards before, one of the things I would go back and do, I would get online and find a free online medical terminology course. And I would do that first. In those 40 hours, the first 6 hours would be doing a medical terminology online course for free. And they're out there. They're out there. You just have to search for them. Des Moines University has a good one.
All right, this question came into me through email, and I wanted to ask you this, Mark. Are there any actual pictures or graphs? Oh, we just lost him. Well, Trevor, you get to answer this question. Are there any actual pictures or graphs of sinus rhythms on the NCLEX that we need to interpret, or simply worded questions?
So it's possible that you'll have or be faced with an interpretation of an EKG strip. And we go through in our review the 6 EKG abnormalities or dysrhythmias that you need to know. And so, yes, you'll be faced with that. You also have to know words that are associated with the different dysrhythmias and be able to interpret those as well. So, yeah, pictures and words, you'll be confronted by both.
Most of the pictures that I don't know, I lost connection there for a second, got it back up. But most of there are 6 basic rhythms that they're going to test by sight. And you should know those. And those are in the review and whatnot. And I don't know, did they say that, Sharon?
Yeah, I just touched on it. But you had suggested that they could go to this website.
Yep.
Do you want to tell them more about what they can find there?
This is a website that has a lot of information about clinical skills of nursing. So it's a broad thing, but one of the subtopics is rhythm strip interpretation. And they have lots of good examples for you to practice with. But don't try to learn them all, because that's not the goal. The goal is you need to know asystole, VFib, VTAC, PVCs, AFib, and atrial flutter. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, if you go to this site, I always say because we all know nurses, right? Nurses are type A, obsessive, and they got to know everything, right?
Yep.
So I always say, if you can't just stick with the 6 rhythms we tell you need to learn, you're allowed to learn 2 more, and that's it. And none of them can be 3rd degree heart block. You do not need to know 3rd degree heart block to pass NCLEX.
Or anything that has 2 cardiologists' names hyphenated.
Right. All right. Just a couple more questions, I think. Just a couple things that popped up. Pete. Hey, Pete. For someone who's coming to the July 15th, are you sending out the books or a PDF?
Yeah. So what I've chosen to do, and I guess it's probably still up for discussion, is I like to mail out the book. That's just my preference, because I'm not the oldest in this group. I'm the second oldest in this group. So it's a little bit of my roots that are just maybe hard to give up. So I know those are all out in the mail. But anyway, that's just me showing my age, but we'll see what happens.
Now, this question I don't want to spend a lot of time on, because Mark and Trevor both talked about it in interviews that are going to be posted in a couple days or a couple weeks. But just quickly, Mark, is there a QBank that you recommend?
Yeah, we don't have a QBank because there are some good ones out there. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. I like anything by Davis and anything by Lippincott.
Okay, well, I think we've got most of this stuff. Some other questions are coming in, but they're kind of repetitive. People can watch the beginning. I don't know if you want to do this, Mark, but she thinks if you say her name, she will pass NCLEX.
Kendra Morgan.
There you go, Kendra. He said your name. Is that a song? I would sing it, but I'm a horrible singer. I'm not singing any songs. Okay. So go to Klimek Reviews, register for a review. There's some stuff coming up. Mark, you're going to be doing a live review in person in Ohio in August.
August 3, 4, 5. It's not really in Ohio.
You're doing. Oh, I have you down as August 20.
That's in Columbus area.
I have August 22 through 24. Did you add? You have another one in early August too?
No, that's been on the site for a long, long time. It's August 3, 4, 5 in northern Kentucky. It's just right. It's just like 5 miles from the Cincinnati airport.
Okay. I missed that one. Sorry about that.
No problems.
Okay. Well, we will say goodbye to these guys, and I appreciate you being on.
It's good to see you.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for everybody in the chat there in the comments.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for hosting, Sharon.
You're welcome. Yep. I'm going to remove you. I'm going to remove Mark last because I know everybody just our last glimpse of Mark Klimek. Okay. Bye, Mark.
Bye.
All right. So we're done. As soon as I end the broadcast, it'll probably take a couple minutes to process, and then it'll be up for you to watch. And I will be we have now officially started the channel, and so I will be starting to post videos on a regular basis, and you can keep an eye out for that. My email, if anybody's looking for it, which maybe you're not, but if anybody's looking for it, there's my email. If you have questions about the YouTube channel, feel free to email me. The other thing is I will do more live reviews, not live reviews, excuse me. I got a text. I will do more live streams if you guys start emailing me with questions, because there's only so much just general chit chat we can do, right? Like I can come up with a certain number of questions, and then there's not many more questions I can come up with. So if you guys email me questions that you want to have answered, I would be happy to do live streams. I can't promise Mark will be at all of them. Let me tell you what I really like to get emails of. I love it when you guys send me emails of NCLEX questions that you can't figure out. So in other words, you're going through your test bank and you get a question. You're like, oh, I know why they said this was the answer, but I can't figure out why. Take a snapshot of it, email it to me. If I get enough of those, even if I get even 5 or 6 of those that are decent questions, I will do a live stream where I answer those. So I would love to see that. Feel free to email me that stuff. There will be, please let me know if you make changes to the Blue Book. We don't make changes all that often. Every 3 years at the most. I know we're going to be doing a little bit of an update to the Yellow Book here soon, but it's not going to be anything major. We will certainly post things. One of the nice things about having a YouTube channel is it lets us be a little bit more timely in making announcements. So we will certainly get those kinds of things out. All right. Anything else? Okay. Natasha, I didn't really post your question, but you have to pay separate for each level of Mark's tutoring. Okay. You have to pay separate for each level of Mark's tutoring. It's $100 each level. So, all right, my friends, I'm getting ready to end the broadcast. It was a great night, a great start to our Klimek Review channel. And I wish you all the best. We'll be starting to drop videos tomorrow. Have a great night.